Well, it's no secret that President Donald Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has many critics.
Their main complaint seems to be centred on a common theme, that she is a, quote, Russian asset or, quote, compromised, or a sympathiser of former Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad.
She disputed some of these characterizations at her confirmation hearing yesterday. Let's take a look.
Before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home. You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States, accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet. I have no love for Assad or Gaddafi or any dictator. I just hate Al-Qaeda.
Another concern among lawmakers from both sides is her apparent sympathy for Edward Snowden, the man who leaked classified intel over what he thought was a gross surveillance overreach. Here's Senator Michael Bennet grilling Gabbard on that yesterday.
Is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America? That is not a hard question to answer when the stakes are this high.
Senator, as someone who has
your
served
answer,
in
yes
uniform,
or no, is Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
as someone who has worn our uniform in combat, I understand how critical our national security is.
Apparently you don't.
In the wake of Gabbard's hearing and confirmation process, journalist Aaron Mate has written a piece for Real Clear Investigations titled, "The Record Shows Tulsi Gabbard Was Not an Apologist for Russia-Backed Syria." Mate writes, Gabbard's record on Syria and that of the intelligence community she is poised to lead shows that her views are not the fringe position that her detractors claim. Gabbard has never offered support for Assad or issued a blanket denial of chemical weapons used by his recently ousted government. Joining us now to dive deeper into Gabbard's record and discuss her confirmation is Aaron Mate himself. Aaron, thank you for joining us today on Rising.
Thanks for having me.
So let's get right into it. She opened up her confirmation hearing, her opening statement there, saying that she is not a puppet for anyone and that these smears are basically designed to cut her down because she's not a puppet for the intelligence community or for members of Congress. What did you make first of her performance in the past day when she was in front of the Senate?
On the positive side, she revealed the truth that has been concealed from the American public for more than a decade. During her opening statement, she read a statement from Jake Sullivan, the recent national security advisor under Joe Biden, that he wrote back in February 2012 to Hillary Clinton about the war in Syria. And what did he say? Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. And what Sullivan meant was that the U.S. was supporting an insurgency in Syria to overthrow Assad that Jake Sullivan and his colleagues knew was dominated by Al-Qaeda. And Tulsi Gabbard, when she learned about that, came out against it. And for taking that position, the very lonely position, she's been pilloried and smeared as a Russian and Syrian asset. And at her confirmation hearing, she not only read Jake Sullivan's statement, Al-Qaeda is on our side, but she called out that policy of the U.S. arming an Al-Qaeda dominated insurgency, and no one had a single response to her, because she's right. It's a scandal that 10 years after 9/11, the U.S. decided to partner essentially with Al-Qaeda to help overthrow the government of Bashar al-Assad. And the result is, as Tulsi Gabbard also said, that now Syria is ruled by an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. The new leader, who just declared himself president, Mohammed al-Jalani, is the founding leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria and a former deputy leader of ISIS. And this is a major scandal that Tulsi Gabbard has been challenging. And it was very noteworthy that no one could refute her when she pointed this out. Now, on the issue of Edward Snowden, this was the obsession of many senators who really wanted her to say that Edward Snowden is a traitor. Now, undoubtedly, Edward Snowden, as Tulsi Gabbard said, broke the law, but the disclosures that he put out led to U.S. courts finding that the NSA mass surveillance programs that he exposed are illegal. So yes, he broke the law, but also he revealed illegality. And I wish Tulsi Gabbard had answered the question directly. She doesn't have to say, I understand if she'd said, no, he's not a traitor, that would have maybe set some senators off into such a fury that there's no way she would be confirmed. But she could have said, that's for courts to decide. And she could have pointed out that being a traitor means you betray your country to help another foreign country. That's not what Edward Snowden did. He gave information to journalists who then who put out journalism such as Glenn Greenwald that exposed criminal behavior by the government and showed that people like James Clapper, who Tulsi Gabbard is vying to replace, lied to Congress when he denied that the U.S. was carrying out mass surveillance. So I wish she had said, and just answer the question, say that's for courts to decide, because she's not a judge. Edward Snowden can be charged and go before a court, and they can decide if he was a traitor. I don't think there is evidence to support that. But overall, I thought her calling out these intelligence deceptions and the freak out she got from these bipartisan lawmakers for refusing to call Snowden a traitor, for challenging the dirty war in Syria, for raising questions about the U.S. role in fueling the proxy war in Ukraine. I thought that was very admirable.
In relation to the Edward Snowden question, Aaron, I think that, all of our audience will have their own individual views as to whether he's a traitor or not. I surmised from Gabbard's answers that she doesn't think he's a traitor, which is, a legitimate debate to have for sure. And so, to my mind, she was kind of standing up for what she believed, when perhaps the more politically easier course would have been to say that he was a traitor, to shore up Republican support. But on a different issue, as her confirmation process has gone on, she does seem to have changed her view pretty abruptly on a certain provision of FISA, the surveillance law, Section 702 specifically, where she appears to be a lot more sympathetic to granting the government those powers than she was at a previous point in her life. What did you make of that?
Well, first, on the issue of Edward Snowden, I agree with you. Had she just simply said, yes, Edward Snowden is a traitor, that would make her path to confirmation much easier, because that's what the senators from both parties wanted to hear. But the fact that she refused to tell them what they wanted her to say shows that, as she said in her opening statement, she's not a puppet. She actually wants to stand by her convictions on certain key issues, including what Edward Snowden did, because I think she appreciates the fact that he exposed illegal mass surveillance. So I thought that I wish she had given an answer that was just more direct and saying that, that's for courts to decide. But the fact that she refused to go along with what they wanted her to say, I think is admirable. But you're right. On other issues, she has abandoned past positions when it comes to 702. Also on the issue of Israel-Palestine, I used to feel as if she was much more fair-minded in some of her past statements when she was running for president in 2019, 2020. Now she's adopted the Trump administration policy of fulsome support for Israel in its mass murder campaign in Gaza, which I find unfortunate. So certainly she's flip-flopped, but that's also what happens in Washington. I'm not going to hold her to a higher standard. Everybody, even someone like Bernie Sanders, who I've long admired, abandons previous positions. So that's just par for the course. There's a certain game you have to play to get confirmed if you want to be in these positions of power. But on key issues like Edward Snowden, and also on the very explosive issue of Syria chemical weapons allegations, where she's also stood apart in raising serious questions about these claims that the U.S. has lodged against the former Syrian government to take the U.S. off to war, to bomb Syria and impose sanctions. She's raised questions, and she's cited a scandal that's been ignored across the media, the OPCW whistleblower scandal, where the world's top chemical weapons watchdog, the OPCW, centered its own investigation into one such incident in Duma in 2018. And brave whistleblowers in the OPCW challenged that cover-up. Tulsi Gabbard has supported them. And at that hearing, when she cited them in response to Senator Mark Kelly completely ignored the issue, because, again, that underscores that these whistleblowers actually are onto something, and therefore he can't contend with their findings.
Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today on Rising, breaking down Tulsi Gabbard's confirmation hearing. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. More on why former Vice President Kamala Harris never made it onto the Joe Rogan podcast.